Before we kick off with the main stuff I was hoping we'd talk about today, I want to give you a couple of dates, some big stuff that's coming up. The first one, you saw on your chair, I put out some flyers for the Value Them Both amendment. This is the final hour, right? And August 2nd is when the vote is on the constitutional amendment to restore our rights to regulate the abortion industry that were taken away by the Kansas Supreme Court. And so starting at the end of this month, I'm going to start going back out and knocking on doors and telling people the truth about the amendment. There are a lot of folks who've contacted me at events and such asking me to help. So I'm going to do a volunteer training. It's going to be right here at Bontai Restaurant on the 20th of March at 3 p.m. So if you can be here, again, that's the 20th of March. It's a Sunday at 3 p.m. I know Sundays stink, but I'm still in Topeka through the week, so that's really the day I've got available. If you don't catch me on that time, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of other opportunities for us for me to enlist your service if you'd like to help with that. I'm sorry, sir. 3 p.m., sir.
And what kind of training is it?
It's door knocking training. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go door to door and talk to our neighbors here in Leavenworth, and hand them this thing that's on your chair and talk to them about what the amendment really does. Because frankly, we're not going to get a fair shake in the media. We're not going to share a fair shake in the newspaper. They're going to say that it bans abortion. They're going to and clothes hangers and all those horrible things. So the only person on the doorstep talking to our neighbor. Here at Bontai, it's going to be on the 24th of March at 6 p.m. I'll send out through my mailing list pretty soon the details. If you're not on my mailing list, I've got a sign-in sheet back there. Please put your name and your email so I can add you to the mailing list and keep you up to date on the stuff that's going on. But so I don't know if you know this, but June's Northland here in town, she's selling her business. And my wife, it was just driving her nuts because it's such a great business, and she wished she had two of her and she could be in both places. Her and June have conspired to move some of the business here into the restaurant. And so they've been hard at work up on our upstairs event space. This is the sneak preview of the Bontai Event Center that we're doing upstairs. Eventually, we're going to build onto this room out into here and have a bigger event space here in the restaurant. Doing events up there, and June's going to be here in the kitchen cooking her favorites and our favorites when we have events up here if people want, American as opposed to Thai food. So that's on the 24th of March at 6 p.m. So myself, Representative Tim Johnson, Representative Lance Neely, and Representative David French, we're going to do a forum. It's kind of a first adjournment wrap-up of the stuff that's gone on in Topeka at the normal Leavenworth County Republican Party Town Hall, which is going to be on the 4th of April. It's a Monday. They do it at the Heritage Center. We do it at the Heritage Center. 6:30 p.m. they have food, and then they kick off the program at 7. So if you're not from my district, which some of the folks here in the room are not from North Leavenworth or Fort Leavenworth, and you want to hear from your representative what he's doing, they're all going to be there. You can corner him and ask him questions. And then you can corner him now if you live in Baser. That's on the 4th of April, Monday, 6:30. And then finally, I want to put in a plug for the Free State Dinner. It's a Leavenworth County Republican Party fundraiser. It's on the 9th of April, which is, I think, a Saturday, 9th of April at 5:30. And it's going to be down at the Z&M Vineyard, which is right off of I-70. It's still in Leavenworth County, but it's on the south end of the county. We thought it'd be nice to spread the wealth. Plus, Z&M Vineyard, it's a veteran-owned business. If you know Brian and Gina, they're the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. They're very successful business owners. They've expanded and built an event center down there, and they've offered to let us use the event center for the event. And
that's state, not state.
Yeah, free state dinner, not steak dinner. Yeah, it ain't free because it's a fundraiser. So, yeah, nice try, Chris. Nice try. Yeah, it's 5:30 is when they start, and they'll do a social hour. So I got a couple things that I've got kind of written down I'd like to talk about just to give you an update on what's going on here and in Topeka. And then I'm leaving plenty of time at the end, about 20 minutes. If anybody would like to ask any questions, I'll do my best. If you want to have an extended conversation, in a little while they're going to bring in the appetizers here, and I'm going to hang out. I got nothing going on till 2. So if you want to talk to me in detail about something, want to have a conversation about something, I'm at your disposal. So so if you feel like it's something that can't be answered with a question and answer, and you'd like to have an extended conversation with me, feel free to hang out after. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is some of the stuff that's going on in our school district because it's in the news. If you saw the newspaper this week, there's a front page, above fold, top story about the school district's response to some stuff that's gone on in the school district. And I want to talk about it first because it impacts all of us as residents in the school district, as taxpayers, and possibly as parents or grandparents of kids in our schools. And those kids are our future, right? I mean, how we educate them and how we arm them for the future really determines our future. But I also want to talk about it because there's some legislation that's pending in Topeka that I'm a big proponent of, that I've kind of joined the coalition to get passed. And I want to talk about what it actually does, not what, people say it does. So if you're sitting there thinking, what the heck's he talking about going on in our schools, I'll kind of catch you up. So last month, Mr. Zeck, who's with us today, during public comments, he shared a book, is Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, that was being taught to our high school sophomores. And he read one passage out of it, and I've since been sent many other passages out of it, so he didn't actually pick the worst one, if you ask me. But he picked a passage out of it, and he read it out loud. And the president of the board ended up storming out, but he was just showing parents and showing the school board, this is what our kids are being taught. Since then, some other stuff has come out. One of our great school board members, Vanessa Reed, one of our new school board members, who I was out there campaigning for, and a bunch of people in this room were out there campaigning for, she went to the school library and found some anime books, manga, I guess is what you call a comic book that's an anime style, and they were frankly offensive. In fact, they were so offensive, she put them up on Facebook, and Facebook took them down because they violate community standards. And the community standards on Facebook is 13 or older. Anything you put on Facebook has to be appropriate for 13 or older. So this stuff was so shocking that even Mark Zuckerberg blushed and took it off of Facebook. But that's what your tax dollars is paying for in our school. But I've been, since this has all occurred, I've been sent a lot of other stuff that has been, that's going on in our schools from other concerned parents. There's a book, it's called Twisted, that's being read out loud in 9th grade class, that's got a lot of sexual content, a lot of content about drug use. I don't know about you, but we've got a huge overdose problem in our town with young people overdosing on fentanyl and other drugs. I mean, we've had a lot of deaths from drug use. I personally don't want drug use normalized by being taught in our schools, in our books, and in the materials that we're teaching our kids. I've also received surveys that were given in class at the beginning of the school year by a couple teachers asking kids not just to disclose their vaccine status, but the vaccine status of the family members in their house and the kids in their house. I've gotten pictures of teachers with BLM flags flying in their classrooms. I've gotten, we had a report last year, and thank God this principal has decided to move on. He's not going to be in our school district anymore, but one of the principals was requiring that parents have vaccines in order to participate with their kids in school events. So there are a lot of concerns in our school. And, of course, the other side, the teachers' unions, the superintendents and their friends in the Democratic Party are painting this as book banning. We're just trying to make a big pile out in the Leavenworth High School parking lot and burn books, because we're all, arch conservative bomb throwers, and we just want to burn books. Well, I think that parents should have a say in the instruction of their children. And the parents whose kids are entrusted to that school all day, because that's what happens, right? When you put your kid on the bus or you drop your kid off at school, you are entrusting your child to the care of the adults in that school until you come pick them up or they get back on the bus and they come home. So I think that parents should have some say in what happens to their kids while they're in the care of the school, while they're entrusted to the teachers and the principals and the superintendents in the school. And I linked to Vanessa Reed. I've talked at length to a couple other conservative school board members, and that's all they want. They want a review of the curriculum. They want the people that are responsible for bringing these materials in to come in and explain why they think these materials, maybe there's some, I don't have an educational degree. My degree's in history. So for all I know, there's some deep learning goal that can only be achieved by reading out loud in a class to kids a book about masturbation. I don't know. Maybe there's some educational principle I'm not aware of. Let's bring in the curricula writers, let's bring in the principal, let's bring in the teachers that are teaching this material and have them explain why this material is being taught. And if they can't, or they won't, or there isn't a good reason, well, let's use some other book that achieves that teaches the same lessons, that achieves the same educational goals without scandalizing our children. But then there's also the bigger problem, which is, okay, so we solved this problem, right? There's this one book, enough people have objected to it, they're going to take that out of the curriculum. What else? I reviewed with you a couple of things that I've been sent or that have emerged since this first book. What else is in the curriculum? What's in the middle schools? What's in the elementary schools? I don't know. Yeah, or there's all these little clubs that are that the kids are involved in. That what materials are being reviewed in there, and so. What we really need is a curriculum review in our school, and that's what those school board members are fighting for.
Does that include library content?
Yeah, exactly. And so,
the other thing too is if you've got
well, please hold the questions for the end, Scott. I apologize. So that you're probably asking yourself right now, okay, well that's interesting, and I'm on board with that, or maybe you're not on board with that, but. Why is Pat Proctor, state representative, talking about this? Well, first of all, I'm a citizen of Leavenworth, just like all of you, and my tax dollars go to that school, same as all of you. But also, there is legislation that is moving through the Kansas State House, which will address this on a state level. Because not every school board has great freedom fighters and great conservative members like our school board. And there are some things that are so important about protecting our children, about giving parents a say, that they shouldn't be optional for a school no matter who's in the school board, in my opinion. So there's a bill that's going through the House right now. It's House Bill 2662. And what it does is it requires schools to put the curricula on the internet so that parents can see it. You know, I would like it to go further. I think that if you're going to teach sexually charged or, you know, offensive stuff to kids, parents should have to opt into that, not opt out, because we're busy, right? You know, you get a letter in the mail, kid brings home a note, you just scribble and, you know, here, take it back, or, you know. But if parents have to opt in, if they have to say, yes, I want my kids exposed to this content, that's a different story, right? Now they're having to make a conscious decision. They pay attention. They're like, what? You want to teach my kid what? You know, and then maybe some of this stuff fixes itself. But that's not what the bill says. Unfortunately, that's not what the bill says. And it's because we got to get 84 people, right? Because the governor's going to veto whatever we pass. So what, you know, I'm definitely further to the right than this bill is, but I understand that we got to get what we can get to give parents a say in what's going on in our schools. So the first thing this bill does is it puts everything on the internet so that parents can see what their kids are learning. The next thing that it does is it formalizes a review process. If you saw in the paper the other day, if you saw in the paper, if you saw on Facebook on the school district's Facebook page, they had it. If you went to their website, there was an alert that popped up right when you went to their website where they had their statement about the material that's been exposed in the schools. And it basically boiled down to, if you're a teacher or if you're a parent and you don't like something, talk to the teacher. If she won't help you, he or she won't help you, talk to the principal, and they'll do a review. And if they agree with you, they'll let your kid not participate in it. Well, I've talked to people who've gone through that process. A couple folks whose kids are in 9th grade, and they heard about the book and they saw the book and they're like, I don't want that twisted book. They didn't want their kids to be taught that book. By the time that the review process had completed, the book had been taught, and their kids had to sit in the class and listen to the teacher read out loud that book to them. So, you know, okay, thank you for giving me a review process. Well, what this bill does is it creates a mechanism by which parents can object to material, and the material will be flagged so that other parents know about it. Because, you know, the school district statement said something to the effect of, well, only 5 people have objected to this book. Well, 5 people have objected to the book because 5 people knew the book was being taught. I guarantee, you know, the video that I put out of Mr. Zeck's public comments right now it's got over 10,000 views. I haven't looked in a few days. And the school board, the district has gotten hundreds of emails. So I'm certain that if all those parents had known about this book before their kids were exposed to it, they would have objected, right? So that's the problem, is the parents don't know about the stuff, so they can't object to it. So what this bill does is it creates a mechanism where if parents object, the book becomes kind of flagged so that when it goes on to the internet, other parents will know that some parents have objected to the material, so they can zero in. Because, I mean, if you've got to review your child's entire 1 year of curriculum, you know, 8 hours, however many hours a day, it's too much information. But if certain things are flagged that, hey, parents have objected to this, you can zero in, you can look at it and you say, well, yeah, that's fine for my kid, or no, that's not fine for my kid. So there's a lot of misinformation about this bill out there. The library, you know, using your tax dollars, and the website that you paid for with your tax dollars has put out a statement in opposition to this bill, saying that it would ban books in their library. The legislative process, it's like writing a book, right? I've written a couple books. You write a draft, you turn it in. People look at it, no, that sucks, take that out, you know, this is too wordy, we don't have room for this. You scratch it out, you turn it back in, you go back and forth. Well, legislation is iterative like that, right? You write legislation, the committee reviews it, they hear testimony from people who support it, they hear testimony from people who don't support it, and then they amend it. They take things out, they put things in until it's something that the whole committee can vote yes on. Well, that's what happened with this bill. And maybe, at the beginning of the session, the bill had some things in it. I don't know, because I got on board with this bill as it was coming out of committee. Maybe it had things in it, but what it has in it right now is what I just described to you. So there's nothing about public libraries. There's nothing about banning books, or it's just what I described to you. The final thing that the bill does, because I know I'm going to put this video up and somebody's going to say, "You liar, it also says this." So the other thing that it does is, if your kid's going to get a survey in class, like say that vaccine survey where they're surveying to find out who in your household is vaccinated, if your kid's going to get a survey, that also has to be posted on the internet, and parents can object to that and have their kids not take that survey. So that's what's in the bill right now, okay? And there's, like I said, there's nothing about banning books, there's nothing about burning books. I just wanted to explain what's in the bill and why I'm supporting it. I love teachers. I mean, when I'm not in Topeka and I'm not in here being worked to death by my wife, I'm in Wichita and I teach. And I get the product of our K through 12 education system. And I teach in the Homeland Security program. I also teach some history. And my hat's off to teachers, because they've got a really hard job. They're trying to balance what these administrators and what the teachers unions want with their responsibility to our kids. And I really think that this legislation also helps our teachers, because that you heard me talk about the process that the school board, that the school district described, that's in place now. If the teacher is made by the curriculum writer to teach material, the parents don't go to the curriculum writer, and the parents don't go to the superintendent who's overseeing all that. The parents go to the teacher, and the parents are mad at the teacher because the teacher's teaching what he or she is told to teach. And so I really think that this is helpful to our teachers as well, because it takes the onus off of them and puts the onus back on the whole district to be transparent about what they're teaching and what they're not teaching. And if you want to talk more about that when we get to questions, I'd be happy. I'd talk to you about this for days, because I'm really passionate about it. I think that parents should be in control of what their children's education, and I think that this bill does that. I want to talk about a couple constitutional amendments that are coming through the legislature right now that may be on our ballots over the next few months. Last year I was honored to vote for the value them both amendment. We had an overwhelming majority, 2 over the supermajority that was required to put it on the ballot. And I thought, okay, so we've done our duty. We have put to the voters a constitutional amendment to allow them to take back the power to regulate the abortion industry. I thought that was going to be our only constitutional amendment, but there have been a lot of things that have come, that are moving through the legislature that are additional constitutional amendments, additional systemic changes that are being proposed to our Constitution. Now remember, I want to do, because not everybody's a geek about this stuff like I am. There's a whole process for something to be added to our Constitution. 2/3 of both houses, the House and the Senate, both have to vote affirmatively to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot. Then it goes on the ballot, and then all of us, you and me, as voters in the state of Kansas, we all get to vote. And it has to get 50% plus one person in order to be added to the Constitution. And you might be thinking to yourself, man, it's really hard to get a constitutional amendment. Yeah, that's the point. It's supposed to be really hard to change our highest law in the state of Kansas, right? And so it is a burdensome process. And if you've been following Value Them Both for years like I have, it failed. In the previous legislature in 2020, it failed by 4 votes in the House. By the way, all 4 of those folks didn't come back because their voters weren't very happy about it. But it failed by 4 votes. And so it is a very high burden. But since the session has started in Topeka, there have been several more constitutional amendments that have been added to our ballots over the next few months, and I want to talk about them. And I voted for all the ones that have come to me so far, so I also want to explain why I think they're a good idea. So the first one is about regulations. So when we write a bill, I don't know. So let's take this bill we were just talking about, the Parents' Bill of Rights, the House Bill 2662. So we write that bill. We don't say, like when you publish the curriculum, it has to be in 12-point font, and you have to italicize every parent warning, and you have to. That's just too much detail, right? What we do is we establish the law that says, hey, school, you have to put things on the internet. And then we tell the Department of Education, set the regulations and standards by which this law will be implemented, right? And so the executive branch, the governor's different departments, they actually write the regulations about how things actually are implemented. Well, sometimes they don't like what they've been told to do. And so they write the regulations in a way that totally reverses what it is that the legislature wanted to do. For instance, there was a regulation that was recently passed by the Department of Labor that imposed regulations on workman's comp insurance that was going to totally they legislated from their office. They wrote a law from their office and called it a regulation, and it imposes millions and millions of dollars on Kansas businesses and additional requirements that the legislature never approved. But there's your regulation. And right now, the only way for us to fix it is to come back into session and pass a new law that says that regulation is bad, it doesn't meet our intent, that regulation is illegal. If you had to do that for every regulation, remember, we're a part-time legislature. We're only up there January to May. So in this specific instance, if the regulations passed on May 31st, which is what they always do, they wait till we're out of session, then they do the things they know we won't like. It would be a half a year before we would come back into session, and then another half a year to get the bill passed and signed by the governor, or vetoed by the governor, come back to us and override the veto, right? So this constitutional amendment that has come through the legislature and will be on the ballot in November if the Senate also passes it. I don't believe they've passed it yet. I could be wrong. But it would be on the ballot in November if the Senate also approves it by a 2/3 majority, gives the legislature the authority to review and override regulations if they don't meet legislative intent, which I think is the way it should be done, because in the Constitution it gives the legislature the power to write laws. The executive branch is only empowered to execute the laws that are written by the legislature. They don't get to write their own laws, right? So I like that constitutional amendment, and I voted for it. You'll all get a chance to vote for it if the Senate passes it in November. You will. The next one is a bill about sheriffs. Sheriffs are elected in 104 counties in Kansas. In one county, they decided back in the 70s that they wanted to not have an elected sheriff. And so they went through the process that's in the Constitution, and they have exempted themselves from that requirement, and they have basically a consolidated Manhattan and Riley County police entity that does law enforcement in the entire county. That's what they decided to do. That's what the voters decided to do. There is a move afoot down in Johnson County to do the same thing, but not for the same reasons. The Manhattan sheriff's decision, or the Riley County sheriff decision, was really about efficiency and about cost effectiveness and saving taxpayers money, which is why taxpayers were for it. In Johnson County, frankly, it's about giving the Johnson County commissioners more power, because through this COVID thing, they were passing these rules about COVID mitigation that most people didn't like, and the elected sheriff was reluctant to impose fines and close down businesses and all this, because he's also a representative of the people. And I think that's what the founders of our state intended, is that law enforcement was ultimately answerable to the people, and that the sheriff, could make independent decisions about how to enforce the law for the folks in his county. That's not in the Constitution. That's just how it is in 104 counties in our state. A constitutional amendment has come through the legislature, and I voted for it. The House passed it by 2/3 majority. That would put that in the Constitution, that in 104 counties, sheriffs are elected. It would not do anything to Riley County. Riley made their decision before our constitutional amendment. They wouldn't have to suddenly dismantle their law enforcement center and have an election for a sheriff. They decided to do what they did, and the committee that heard testimony on this respected that decision and exempted them. Now, if they ever decide that they want an elected sheriff, they won't be able to go back afterwards. If they have a vote of the people and they decide that they want an elected sheriff at some point in the future, then 105 counties will forever, until the Constitution's changed, have an elected sheriff. But if they want to stay how they are, the bill doesn't do, this amendment, constitutional amendment, wouldn't do anything to Riley County. They can keep what they got. But I like that, because I do like the idea that our sheriff, the law enforcer, the senior law enforcer in the county. Now, the senior law enforcement officer is theoretically the county attorney, but the guy who's actually running, leading the guys on the ground that actually go make arrests and do investigations, the senior guy is the sheriff. I think it's great that he's elected. I think that's a good thing. I think it's something that we should sustain. There's two other constitutional amendments that we have not seen in the House yet that are moving through the Senate that I also wanted to talk about. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that Sheriff's Amendment is also going to be in November. If the Senate passes it, it'll be on your November ballot. Make sure you flip it over. There'll be a constitutional question on there. But the final constitutional amendments are something I'm very passionate about, and so I wanted to tell you about it, so hopefully you can call your senator or email your senator and let him know that you're for it too, if you agree with me. A lot of people don't know this, but the Supreme Court that inexplicably found a right to an abortion in the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in our Constitution in April 2019, that Supreme Court, those justices, you have no voice in who is a Supreme Court justice. You have no voice at all, right? There is a panel that's made up of more than half lawyers and then half people that are appointed by the governor that picks a list of 3 Supreme Court justice, and then the governor says, that one. And they're a Supreme Court justice. The end. That's it. That's how a Supreme Court justice is picked. The legislature has no voice. You individually have no voice, and so you get what we got in this abortion decision in April 2019, because they're not accountable to you. They don't give a hoot what you think, right? So I don't think that's the way to pick judges. I believe that your voice should be reflected. And apparently over in the Senate, they believe that too, because there are 2 amendments that are being considered over there. They may have already been voted on. I'm sorry, I may be a day late, but if they haven't already been voted on, they will be soon. They're basically 2 alternatives for you to pick on how you want judges picked. I guess there's 3 alternatives. You could vote no on both of them, and then it'll stay the way it is, right? Or you could pick one of these that is moving through. If we all vote on it, 2/3 majority, you'll get the say. And right now it sounds like it's going to be in August, so it'll be on the ballot with the value of them both amendment. The first option that is moving through the Senate is a federal model, right? The way U.S. Supreme Court justices are picked at the federal level, the U.S. Supreme Court, is the president pick somebody, the Senate has a confirmation hearing in the Judicial Committee, and then they bring it to the Senate floor, and a majority of senators have to vote yes, and then that person's a Supreme Court justice. That reinserts your voice because those senators represent 70-some thousand people, each of them, and they're accountable to those voters every 4 years. So it reinserts your voice. The other option that is also moving through is a separate constitutional amendment is direct election, where Supreme Court justices would be put on the ballot, their names on the ballot, we vote on them, yay or nay, and they either do or do not become a Supreme Court justice. And there could be a race, right? Two people could file for the Supreme Court seat, and they would have to campaign, and they'd have to compete. They'd have to convince you that they reflect your values and your view of the Kansas Constitution in order to get elected. I personally prefer the first option, and I'll tell you why. So if we have elections for justices, well, let me use the example of value them both. So we're having a vote in August on the Value them both amendment, which would give us back the right to regulate the abortion industry. Planned Parenthood, all the pro-abortion agencies at the federal level are pouring tens of millions of dollars into our state to defeat that amendment, because their own research shows that if the amendment fails, abortions in Kansas are going to go up 1,300%, and this is going to be the abortion capital of the central United States. And that's a lot of money. Planned Parenthood alone makes $1.6 billion killing babies every year. And imagine how much that's going to go up if our abortions in the state go up 1,300%. And that's just Planned Parenthood. That doesn't count all the other abortion clinics. That's just Planned Parenthood. Imagine like if we directly elected our Supreme Court justices. Every election they'd be dumping tens of millions of dollars in trying to get pro-abortion Supreme Court justices. And by the way, it would be a nonpartisan election. That's what this constitutional amendment says. You wouldn't know if they're Republican or Democrat unless they told you. So there wouldn't be an RD next to their name. And I don't know about you, but I'm very involved in the state races. I'm very involved in the federal races. But when I look at the back of the ballot and it says retain or don't retain the justices, I have to look at my KFL card and say, do I like that guy or not? That's how it'd be, because there wouldn't be an RD next to their name. And so I am in favor of the federal model, just to keep all that outside money out of the selection of our justices. But hey, it ain't going to be up to me. I'm going to get a vote. If the constitutional amendment on both of them, I may vote yes on both of them so that it gives you the alternative to decide, but I haven't decided yet. I'm going to listen to the floor debate, and I'm going to make my decision on the floor. If you've got opinions, share them with me after this, share them with me during questions, share them with me by email or on Facebook, because I want to represent you in what you'd like me to do, but I am leaning towards the federal model. I just haven't decided if I'm going to vote yes on both of them to bring them both to ballot, because you guys are informed because you're on my mailing list and you show up at the town halls and you know what's going on, but a lot of people outside this room, they're not as informed and in voting, especially on these constitutional questions. A lot of people don't know there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot until they flip the ballot over and they discover there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And I don't want them to have to make a snap judgment. So I haven't decided. If you have opinions on what you'd like me to do, please share them with me, because I'm a bit conflicted about it. But those are the constitutional amendments that are going to be on our ballot in the next legislature. So I could keep talking about a whole bunch of stuff, because you guys know me, but I want to leave plenty of time for questions, and so I'm going to shut up about what I want to talk about. But the last thing I'd like to say is, honestly, thank you very much for spending a little bit of your Saturday being informed voters. I would ask that, I appreciate that you guys come here and that you get spun up on these issues and that you're passionate about these issues. Please talk to your neighbors. I try to communicate on Facebook. I communicate through my mailing list. I put a guest column in the paper every month talking about issues, but I can't reach everybody. You guys, if we all talk to all of our neighbors about all of these issues, the power of just that individual interaction with our neighbors is way more powerful than the cable news networks. It's way more powerful than our school superintendent and all the people that are trying to keep things exactly the way they are. So please talk to your neighbors. And so with that, I'll take some questions. Terry Lois, you've had your hand up. Yeah.
So regarding the nurse practitioners not being required to have an MD on staff,
Yeah.
did you get a chance to know the...
Yeah. So I looked up the bill. I can't remember off the top of my head what the bill number was, but you talked to me about it, and also a good friend Judy Beck talked to me about it. So I went and I hunted down the bill, and as far as I know, it's come out of committee, but it hadn't come to the floor. And so for everybody else in the room who's like, what the heck are they talking about? So an advanced practice registered nurse is somebody who, they can set up their own practice, their own office, and they can treat patients. But right now in Kansas law, in order to set up that practice, they have to pay a doctor to sign a piece of paper. He doesn't come in. He doesn't stand there while they write prescriptions. He doesn't stand there while they're looking at the patient. He doesn't look at every x-ray they take. He just gets a big fat check and then signs a piece of paper that says that nurse can practice. Can have an advanced practice. There has been a bill for many, many years to do away with that requirement, or there have also been bills through the years to cap how much a doctor can charge in order to do that. Because, I mean, there is a case to be made that doctor is taking a risk by signing that, because if the nurse gets sued, they could also go after the doctor, and that increases the doctor's insurance. They would say, well, I deserve to be compensated something because my insurance is going to be up. I would say, well, then you should have to sign a paper, because you're signing your life away anyways, because you're never going in that clinic to see if that nurse is doing good, doing bad. So let's just take you out of the process. That's where I'm at on it. And the reason I'm there on it is because we have a healthcare desert up here in North Leavenworth in my district. The Cushing is closed. You can't deliver a baby in the entire city of Leavenworth. They put you on an ambulance, or if you can't get there yourself, they put you in an ambulance. They take you to another hospital. Unless you have it in the ambulance, you ain't having your baby in Leavenworth, right? So anything we can do to get more medical practice here in our town. Right now, really the only option in our town is St. Vincent's Clinic, which is a couple blocks from my house. And that's, they do a great job, but it's a big town, and they're one clinic. So anything we can do to get more healthcare providers in Leavenworth, I'm all for. And I think this is a great way to lower the cost of having a practice. It's like $75 to see Judy Beck. You put them in a car, you take them over to see Judy, and then they get health care, and then you don't have to mess with all the insurance and all that. So yeah, please.
And then my
Yeah.
second question,
Okay.
if I may. I have written all of the legislators of Leavenworth County and asked about expanding on that sheriff's bill.
Yeah.
Because there was also talk about the county treasurer, the county clerk, and the
Yeah.
county register of deeds being moved to also appointed positions.
Yeah.
I adamantly would object to that because it
Yeah.
removes the voice from the people.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I personally think that our property appraiser should also be elected. Of course, we'd have a new one. We'd have a new one every 2 years. But I think that more elected officials making decisions about what's important in our lives is better than less. Now, I understand the flip side of the argument, but I don't agree with it. I would have liked to seen that on the constitutional amendment, but it wasn't on there. And so, it's so hard to get 2/3 majority to vote for something. It's kind of like the Parents' Bill of Rights. There are a lot of things I want in the Parents' Bill of Rights that ended up on the cutting room floor because you got to get 84 votes. And so I agree with it. And if it comes to the House, I'm going to advocate for it. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I would not have had this position had
Yeah.
I not been able to challenge
Yep.
an elected official when I disagree with how
Right.
the
Yeah.
office is run.
Amen. Amen.
Just real quick, Pat. I'm Tim Johnson. Pat and I work together every day. He's so funny. I can torment him.
Okay, next question. No, go ahead.
I had a 31-year career in law enforcement. I've been in a sheriff's office. I will tell you that law enforcement is strongly trying to protect that as a clean bill. They're afraid that if anything else gets on there, it's going to kill it. And I also represent Johnson County and Sheriff Cal Hayden. And so that's part of the background why we have not
Yeah.
wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And I do respect, if you could understand my position, we're afraid that if we don't get the bill. Now, if you're asking me to introduce next year, I'd be more than glad to introduce something else separately
Yeah.
for you.
And
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate.
They asked
Yeah.
for it to be a clean
Yeah,
bill.
yeah, and that brings up a great point that I want to talk about. I've been looking for an opportunity to share this with people because a lot of this is something I didn't understand when I went to legislature. Because believe it or not, I had to learn things when I got up there. A lot I get asked all the time, "Hey, there's this bill and it's awesome and it does da 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 da. You guys need to vote on that. That thing needs to pass." And a lot of times I agree with you. Sometimes I don't agree with you. A lot of times I agree with you. 800-ish, 500 to 800 bills get filed every year, and the vast majority of them never even see a committee hearing. They're just so somebody can write on their push card, I sponsored a bill to make my birthday a holiday or whatever, right? They file the bill so they can tell you they filed the bill, but then they don't go fight for it. And even if they do go fight for it, it might still never see a committee hearing. And after it gets a committee hearing, the committee has to vote on it. And after the committee votes on it, it has to go to the floor. And then after it goes to the floor, we got to bring it back up the next day and vote on it. And every one of those processes has gatekeepers that can stop it from happening. And so when you read in the paper, GOP sponsors a bill to burn books and end the world, maybe somebody did file a bill. I doubt it, but maybe somebody filed a bill. But that doesn't mean that it's ever going to see the light of day, that it's ever going to become a law. And so the other thing is, sometimes it's a great idea and everybody loves it, like the APRN thing, but there are people in the building that don't like it. We've got doctors, not PhDs, but medical doctors who are also legislators that ain't a big fan of the APRN bill because it costs doctors money, but it also creates competition for doctors, right? Because if you can go to a nurse's clinic and get basically the same treatment you would get in a family practice clinic, they don't get the business because they're a lot more expensive. And so, that's always the challenge. That's why that bill hasn't made it out of the House so far. So, but I just wanted to share that. So thank you for teeing that up. Yeah, go ahead.
On the Parents' Bill of Rights, quick comment and then a question.
Yeah.
Comment is, for me as a parent, I appreciate that because it's not about banning books or my kid's going to melt. If it's about setting appropriate boundaries and standards in our schools. And my question is, I hear a lot of complaints about, oh my gosh, we got to post everything that, every material and everything that gives no flexibility. And is there anything in that bill that gives, once the school year started, say you found an interesting article from another source that you'd like to incorporate into your classroom teaching. Could that be added? Is there any flexibility there?
Yeah, and all the legislation says, now there were previous generations, so I'm sure as soon as I put this on Facebook, someone say, he's a liar, it says online such and such in a bill that got, torn up, a month ago. But all the bill says is that you have to put the curricula on the internet, right? So if you're the teacher and you find a great article that you want to bring into the class, when you find it, you put it on the internet, and then everybody, all the parents, if they want to look at it, they can see it, and now you've complied with the law.
It's just materials. It's not
Exactly.
because another thing that I saw that people were up in arms about is like, I have to put all my lesson plans for the entire year on the internet.
And it does. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't say that. It doesn't give a timeline. I can't quote you the exact verbiage, but I'm certain, I guarantee you, somewhere in the bill, it says the Kansas Department of Education will set appropriate regulations, like I was talking about before, set appropriate regulations to implement the measures in this bill. And so they will, in discussion with school districts, in discussion with the Kansas Association of School Boards, in discussions with the Teachers Union, Kansas NEA, they will figure out how to make it workable. But what drives me nuts is if you read the school district statement, it says, we put stuff on the internet so that parents can see what their kids are learning. But it's wrong to make us put things on the internet to make sure, if you're doing it, what's the problem? You should be in support of this because it puts all the schools on parity. So, so I agree with you. There are all these red herrings that they're throwing up. And I would ask everybody in this room, why doesn't the superintendent and why doesn't the Kansas Association of School Boards and why doesn't the Kansas NEA and the teachers unions, why don't they want you to know what your kids are learning in school?
Because they don't think you're in charge as a parent. That's why. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Teachers unions across the country will tell you that parents don't have a say in their kids' education.
And I respectfully disagree. Chris had a question here.
I just read through pages 5 and 6 of the bill, and everything you said is exactly as he stated in the bill. You're right.
Yeah. And I'm gonna put out I'll get to you here in just a second, Chris. I'm gonna put out an email to urge you all to contact our school board before the 14th, and if you can show up for the school board meeting on the 14th, I encourage you to show up to make your voice heard in public comments, because we really need to have a discussion about this in our school district. And right now, the Vanessa Reed is being stonewalled by some of the leadership in the district and the board on getting a hearing on this topic.
Ditto what you just said, and like Pat said, it's very important that we all show up and support not just Vanessa, but the entire Leavenworth school. Let those school board members look us in the eyes when they sit up there and talk their BS. Real quick, I don't know if anyone's aware that there's been this war going on for a while, and some news has not been put out, especially on some of the big mainstream medias like Fox and I think Newsmax. But anyway, I don't know if you're aware of the Pfizer trial clinic documents that were released this week. FDA tried to seal them till like 2097.
75 years.
They came out, they were talking about everything from getting type 1 diabetes. There was a few in there about women's pregnancies. Christine works with a girl right now. Now, I believe her first pregnancy, before she had the shot, she had a miscarriage, but since she's had the shot, she's had 2 more. And nobody's putting out anything. There's probably about 30 different things that have been put in that.
Let me just build that real fast. There's 150 documents on a website that I put out to a lot of you folks already. Some of you I don't have emails for already. And one of the documents that has 8 pages, single space, with no spaces between the syndromes and the diseases you get from the BioNTech, specifically that shot. I had attached that. It's document number BNT 162B 2 5.3.6, cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse effects events reports, is attached. So if you want to see me afterwards, I'll forward it. I can't put it on a message because my message won't take that PDF. but it's out there. There's 150 documents that were produced by a whistleblower when they tried to hide this stuff from us. And not Tom Renz, but Mr. Brown that came to that last Republican meeting we had, his friend, Frank Flieger, he works for Dr. David Martin. They filed a lawsuit in the Utah court system to go ahead and charge Fauci and Bricks and all those warp speed people that honchoed this BioNTech crap through, and the Moderna stuff, which is nearly identical, because they swap spit. And the bottom line is,
That's an ugly picture.
If you want the website and you want that document, you read that document and you've taken these shots, trust me, you'll do some research to see about getting some of the naturopathic things in your system to help you so that you're aware of what you may face in the future. Jerry?
Clark,
I'm just
Clark, you had a question. You had a question earlier, sorry.
I got a quick question and then a comment. Now, what you were talking about with this book of the schools, Twisted, I think it was.
Yeah.
You're saying the teachers are reading this to freshmen?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's in freshman year, I think, English.
Freshman year English, I mean, when I took that, that was about proper grammar, writing essays, parsing sentences. But, you know, teachers stopped reading to us when we were about 9 years old.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they read to them because they
So
can't
my
read.
question,
Yeah.
my thinking is that
Yeah.
these books that they're teaching aren't the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is an absolute failure of any kind of standard.
You know, if I appreciate you raising that.
I'm not talking about
If
a
you,
moral standard,
yeah.
I'm talking about an academic.
If you look at, somebody, when all this debate first started, somebody posted where we rank in Kansas on, basic standardized tests, and we're below the average. And of course, as soon as you say that, well, standardized tests don't da-da-da-da. Okay, yeah. At some point, you either know how to read or you don't know how to read. You either know how to do math or you don't know how to do math. And so I'd like to share with you my experience teaching K through 12 kids in Kansas. I taught, before I left the Army, I taught at Benedictine. I taught world history for a couple of sections. And then now that I teach in Wichita State, I'm teaching the product of the K through 12 education system. And I'll tell you, I have a writing requirement in every one of my classes because sometimes when I grade a paper and I tell people what they're doing wrong, it's the first time anybody's ever told them that every sentence in a paragraph is supposed to be about basically the same thing. That every sentence has to have a subject and a verb, and maybe if you're really fancy, a direct object, right? It's not being taught. It's not being taught, or it's not being taught well enough because we're cramming all this other stuff into it. And that's all I'm trying to get back to is fundamentals.
Here,
Yeah.
My graduate work was in psychology, and I've had graduate level work in advanced psychological testing and stuff. And I'll have to tell you that standardized testing is absolutely the best way to measure the achievement of a group of a demographic.
Yeah, and it's apples to apples, right? If everybody did their own test, you wouldn't know how we do in relation to Shawnee County or Shawnee Mission or so. Yeah, I absolutely agree. So the other thing I wanted to make sure that I said about education, or about this whole debate, something that I see on Facebook, the most civil discussion that you can have. Something I see all the time on Facebook when we're talking about this topic is, well, you think your kids don't already know about that? You think your kids can't see that stuff on the internet? Yeah, that's not the point. The point is when a teacher who is placed in authority over our kids for 8 hours a day, who we place in their authority, when that authority figure stands up and talks about it or reads about it or normalizes it, it creates the impression, it creates in a child an impression that, like, first of all, that's socially acceptable, which I personally disagree with, but also that, hey, it's okay. It's fine. And I mean, like this Twisted book, there's all kinds of talk about drug use and stuff like that. You wonder why our kids are out using drugs and having overdoses and dying? You know, you wonder why we have an epidemic of teenage pregnancy and pregnancy out of wedlock when we've got, you know, when our kids are in school 8 hours a day being subjected to this, you know. Surprise. I'm shocked that we, exactly, or pornography addiction. Yeah, that book. Yeah, please, sir.
What I want to say about the whole thing, I agree that the books, but the liberals are the ones that put the books in. And if you say to the parent, your kid can opt out, you know, peer pressure. They're going to come and say, you're a pansy, you don't want to be in it. We ought to get rid of them altogether, but we're not strong enough as conservatives to stand up for those liberals.
Yeah.
Now, I have one other thing I want to ask you, and
Yes,
this
sir.
is kind of personal, but also goes with the, I'm not in your district, but you're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
The capers.
Yes, sir.
When I retired years ago, my capers was quite a bit more than Social Security. Now it's about the same.
Yeah.
I have a good friend. When I subbed, I got her in Missouri because they were picking on her here. She taught 20 years in Kansas, 7 years in Missouri. She gets about the same retirement.
Yeah.
And in Missouri, she gets a raise every year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've talked about this for years. I wish you'd work on that.
Yes, sir. I am working on it. I promise you, I am working. I'm a Capers beneficiary too, not just in the legislature, but at Wichita State. And so I'm thinking about my own retirement someday, right? I am working on it. I'm working with a guy. He's his name's Ernie Claudel. He's been fighting this battle for years. He's a representative for, it's like Kansas State retired people or so. It's like public employees that are retired. I'm working with him. We've got a bill. But I'll tell you, it's kind of the same thing. If I can't get a hearing on it, I can't get it moving. And I've also got a bill for corrections officers to get them moved from regular capers to capers for police and fire, and I can't get a hearing on that one either. And so if I can't get it heard in committee, I can't get it moved out of committee and to the House floor, but I am fighting for it. I'm one legislator out of 124, but there are a lot of people in the building that agree with this. And frankly, there's a lot of Democrats that love it because they represent more public employees than we do. But if we can't get it out of the committee and we can't get to the floor, I can't get a vote on it and get it moved. I'm working.
That are against it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And I want to say one last thing.
Yes, sir.
The book that Mr. Zach read part of it and you talked about.
Yeah.
There's a lot worse than that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I want to give somebody a chance who hadn't asked a question yet.
I used to be a scoutmaster for 6 years on post, and imagine if I took one of those books and I gave it to a young man in my troop and said, hey, I want you to read this, and then come back and tell me, I would have been crucified.
Yeah.
I would have been, you pervert, you know,
Yeah.
what are you doing with our kids?
Joe Biden.
And I would,
Yeah.
And I would have been asked to step
Yeah.
down or leave,
Yeah.
or even be, you know.
Yeah.
Prosecuted.
It goes back to appropriate
Yeah.
boundaries and standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Place and time.
I could go all day, but we've got some appetizers and refreshments in the back. I'm not going anywhere. I don't have anything on my calendar until 2 o'clock today, so I'm going to be right here in this room. If there's something you want to talk to me about one-on-one or in a small group, I'd be happy to talk about it. But thank you again for coming, and please get some refreshments because we can't leave till all the appetizers are gone. Yep. Come on up here.